So hi, welcome back to Mountain Boys. Today I'm going to be tying a little green machine on a size 18 dry fly hook, and I'm using a copper 2mm bright bead on here. And the way you choose your bead and the way you choose to weight your fly and the hook you use kind of depend on how you are going to fish this, whether or not you're going to be fishing it from a boat, whether or not you're going to be wade fishing, and also the type of rig you're going to be doing. So if you're just going to do like a shot drop rig with multiple flies, or you're just going to kind of straight nymph fish it, or if you're going to use like a hopper dropper. So for this setup, this is probably going to be a shot drop rig fished from the boat. So I'm going to have some extra weight to really keep this down. And also, I'd probably tie it the same way if I was going to just be straight nymphing with just a little bit of split shot, 18 inches or so above the fly on the tippet or something like that. So start off here, like I said, I've got a size 18 dry fly hook and a 2mm brass bead on here. Now, the other setup that would probably work, and maybe even work a little bit better for this, would be to use a 1x long, 1x strong nymph hook. I don't have any of those in stock, so this will work. Plus, using the dry fly hook, you're able to get a really nice smallish taper on the abdomen, especially when you start tying in a bunch of materials on that. If you go with a wider hook, you're going to have a little bit of harder time getting that nice, even, smooth taper on your abdomen. So to get started here, I'm going to tie in just a little bit of 0.015 lead-free wire. I don't need a lot of wraps. I'm only going to maybe go for, 4 wraps here. So just enough to give the fly a tad more weight. Actually, I'm going to go 5 wraps. Just enough to give the fly a tad more weight on the front ends, but more importantly, use that wire in there, once I get it kind of put into place, use that to hold the bead head in place. So trim off the tag ends. I'll kind of press that wire down and in how I want it, like that. You can even use the front of your scissors here to help press it where you need it to go while you're holding it. And it can be a bit of a chore here because it wants to spin on you at the same time while you're trying to press it down. So kind of hold it and press on at the same time. There we go. So once you got those ends pressed down, go ahead and push the whole thing up with your fingernail up into the back of that bead. So there we go. Now I'm using some, what am I using here? 8/0 olive thread. So I guess the traditional little green machine tie would be to use like dun thread or tan thread, and then you'd overwrap that with a red microtubing abdomen body. But I'm going to go for an olive abdomen here, and I'm going to use clear microtubing for the abdomen. So I take that thread wrap back just about to the barb in the hook, maybe just a tad further, but you don't want to go really into the bend of that hook. And it's time to pull in the tail. And for this, I'm just using some pheasant tail rooster fibers here, and somewhere probably 4 or 5. Well, maybe between like 4 and 6 for size 18. Obviously, the bigger you go on your fly, the more tail fibers you're going to need. So kind of pull those perpendicular to the hook, or to the hook, sorry. I pulled those perpendicular to the shaft of the feather there, and then trimmed them off so they all trimmed off nice and even. So now that I've got them even, I'm just going to pinch them together. Go ahead and pinch wrap those in place. Don't need a super tight wrap on this because you can see that tail's still a little too long. So I'm going to have to pull up on it just a little bit until it gets to the length I need. And I want it to be about as long as the shank and the hook up to that bead. So that's maybe even just a tad long right there. So there we go. That's in place. Now I'm going to use small gold ultra wire. I'm going to lay that in. So where is my spool of gold ultra wire here? I've got a piece. Well, anyway, this one's copper. This is if you're going to be tying a rebbed abdomen. But I have a little chunk of gold here left over from some previous flies. So I'll go ahead and lay this into, and I'm going to wrap those pheasant fibers and the ultra wire together up to where it reaches that wire wrap. And I'll just pop the feathers off there, bend my hook back a little bit, and now I'm ready for my tubing. And for this I'm using Wapsi stretch tubing in the micro size here. So you cut yourself off a couple inch piece of it, 3-4 inches. This will last several flies because by the time this is all said and done, by the time you stretch it and wrap it and everything, you've maybe used a ½ inch of this tubing total. So I'm going to go ahead and choke up on my thread here, and I'm going to catch that if my thread will cooperate. It's wanting to turn the other way. Well, there we go. Throw a little loop. Boy, I'm just not catching that. There we go. So I kind of caught the end there. Again, I'm going to pull on that ever so gently down until it catches right at the end. Give it a couple wraps, really secure it. Now I'm going to wrap back clear to the end of my thread body here, and to where my wire and those pheasant tail fibers are exposed. And I'm going to stretch on this tubing pretty hard while I wrap back. So that'll keep you from building up any excess bulk on your abdomen. And give a nice even wraps on the way back, keeping it stretched out the whole way. You can see I'm putting a lot of torque on that little dry fly hook, but it'll take it. So once I reach the end, I kind of let it go. And I'm going to wrap back, and I'm going to work on my body taper now. So I'm going to wrap clear back to the wire. I'm going to wrap back again, maybe half as far, and stop. Wrap back to the wire again, and do the same thing. Wrap back, again, half as far, and then back to the wire. So doing that a couple times will help you build up that nice, perfect taper for your abdomen segment there. And now it's time to go ahead and wrap the microtubing. Again, stretch this pretty taut as you're wrapping it. You don't need to overwrap this stuff. You just need to cover that abdomen there. So I'm just gently working this up, and you can see the torque I'm putting on it on this little dry fly hook. Put quite a bit of torque up to that wire again. I'm going to catch this in probably 3 or 4 wraps, because this material in particular, when you go to snip this off and when you go to do your wire wrap, if it's not seated well under there, that thing will just pop and unravel on you. So maybe an extra 2 or 3 wraps for luck on this guy before you go ahead and trim off the excess here. So, I just set these little materials right here to the side so I can go ahead and reuse them on the next fly. Now, I'm going to counter wrap ultra wire here. They don't need to be super tightly spaced. I usually get about, I don't know, 4.5 full wraps out of this till I get it where I want. And right there, I might just go one more wrap, a tight wrap, just so I have it exactly where I want. So I'll do 2 wraps over, like that. And now I'm actually going to take my thread, I'm going to cross over the wire, and I'm going to counter wrap it in the opposite direction for 2 wraps. And what that does is it really helps seat that ultra wire in there and keeps it from unraveling, because it was wrapped counter to the other, wrapped in the opposite direction as everything else and the thread that you're putting on it. So it'll want to loosen up on you. Once I do 2 wraps on that, I go ahead and fish it over again, change direction, just like that. 2 wraps. Now it'll helicopter off really easy, and I don't have to worry about that ultra wire pulling loose. And that really keeps everything on that rear end of the fly secured and keeps it from coming undone. So next step, it's going to be to tie in wing case. For this, I am using Medium Mirage Opal tinsel. And again, I just got a length of it cut off here that I'm kind of working with to do several flies. I find the best way to do this is kind of just mash it onto the top of your fly, about like so. It's kind of tricky. Get a wrap on it, maybe 2 wraps, and then ever so delicately again, pull back on it to where it clears that bead head, right about there. And get it more or less centered on the top back of that fly. And another wrap to secure it there. Okay, so tinsel's tied in. That'll be our flash wing case. Next step is we're going to tie in some gills, and they're going to go in perpendicular to the hook shank there, and we're going to tie them in spinner fashion. So all I'm using here is a bundle of Parapost synthetic post material here. And you can see when you get a bundle of that post material, there's probably more than what you need for this little itty bitty fly in size 18. So what I did was I just kind of cut off a chunk of that and split it apart and grabbed about half that material. And that's what I'm going to work with here, and this one's already been done. So I'm going to do 1 wrap, make sure it catches on the top, and we're going to figure 8 wrap this now like you would a spinner. So I'm going to come in behind, around, back over, around this way. Whoa, and I lost it. So we're going to have to start that adventure over. Okay. Moisten my fingers there. I can hold on to this stuff. So, choke up on my thread. Loop that in there. Wrap it back around. So I'm holding it. That's what I did wrong. Boom. Boom. There we go. If I could figure 8, then it would turn out all right. So here it is. It's tied in on top of that hook shank, perpendicular to the hook, and now we're ready to dub. And for this, the fly calls for like a, green, olive, peacock style thorax. What I found works really well is this Met's synthetic peacock bronze dubbing here. The problem with this is that it's really, really hard to get yourself wrapped around the thread unless you use dubbing wax, and I don't like using dubbing wax. And I was talking to my uncle about this about a week ago, and he said this stuff is really hard to work with. So here there's probably twice as much material as what I'm actually going to need to dub with, so I grabbed a little too much. I'm going to go ahead and set that to the side. That'll hang out till I do the next fly. So this stuff's hard to work with in general. His suggestion was to just grab your scissors here and go ahead and chop this stuff up a little bit. Make those fibers a little smaller and easier to work with. And if you don't want to use dubbing wax, which I really don't like to use dubbing wax, I kind of Stuff kind of annoys me. What I do instead, once I get that peacock dubbing like that, I grab a little piece of my superfine dry fly dubbing, and I'm going to use some of the Blue Wing Olive. I'm just going to grab the smallest little pinch of that, lay it on top, and I'm actually using a combination of the two dubbings right now. So I get the thread characteristics and the wrapping characteristics of the superfine dubbing with the flash and the size and the texture of that synthetic peacock dubbing. So I think it works pretty well. So once I kind of got them mushed together a little bit, go ahead and wrap them on the thread. Here, twist them on. And this stuff twists on so much better when you use the combination, those two dubbings. And I'll just kind of work it up. And now I'm just going to follow the same figure 8 pattern that I was doing before with the dubbing. And you kind of have to pull your posts out of the way occasionally. And I'll probably go around twice in that same pattern, this dubbing, stopping to kind of pull it taut where I need to. And one more. That's really good. That might even be too much. So now I'll just kind of pull off that excess dub there. Again, I'll stick it in the same spot. It can be used on the next fly. Give it a good wrap or two behind the beadhead. And we're going to wrap that flash over top there. Hold it in place while you catch it. Cinch up on that, seat it real well. Give it another wrap, safety wrap. Nice and taut. And I'm going to go ahead and cut off the flash there. And it's time to whip finish. Again, a small little fly like this, you probably only need a 3 or 4 turn head. And this is where if you mess up on your whip finish and it pops off, you'll probably lose that little bit of crystal flash there too. So there's 4 turns. Pull it taut without breaking it. And go ahead and snip your thread. So tying's complete now on this fly. And now it's just trimming to taste. So to trim this up, again, separate your 2 sides. Make sure everything is more or less where it needs to be. Maybe spin them together a little bit, like that. And then I grab them both at the same time. I pull straight up. And I'm actually going to come in over the top here and just cut them off just like that. So maybe about the same length as the beadhead. So if you pushed them up, they might reach the end of that beadhead right there. And there you go. There is a size 18 olive little green machine. So to finish it here, I'll use just a dab of clear nail polish right there on the whip finish head. Just a little bit, just enough to keep all that stuff coming undone. And that's the fly. So this is really good mayfly nymph. Probably fished in the spring before high water, especially on tailwaters, and also into the later summer. So anyway, this is Mountain Boys. Hope you enjoy this one. It's kind of a pain to get at first, but once you get it, you can turn out a really nice fly. So I'll see you next time.